All right, this is from, let's see, actually the textbook that's listed on there is not the right one. This is engine repair, not engine performance. A battery, we're talking more about batteries. You guys are going to get so sick of talking about batteries you're going to puke. Yeah, we talk about them though. A battery high rate load discharge test is being performed. Technician A says a good battery should have a voltage reading higher than 9.6 volts while under load at the end of the 15-second test. Technician B says the battery should be discharged to twice its CCA rating. Who's right? Just A. Remember, it's half the cold cranking out rating, not twice the cold cranking out rating. Normal battery drain for a vehicle with a parasitic drain for a vehicle with a computer and electronic circuits is what? You got any idea? Actually, it's going to be 20 to 30 milliamps, right? Basically what you're looking for there. If it's got more than that, you got a problem. But remember what I told you the last time we talked about this, was whenever you were measuring the current drain using your amp meter, set it on amps, hook it between the battery cable and battery, you're going to see some current drain on some of the brand new cars. I mean, the newer ones, like, you know, the late 2000s and the early teens and all. Those right there, you're going to have to put it on there and walk away for a while and then come back after everything finally goes to sleep and see if it's still got a draw on it. I'd walk away for about an hour if I could. When jump starting, the last connection should be where?
D.
Engine block of the dead vehicle. Why do we put the last one to the engine block? Anybody got any idea? Anybody ever seen a battery blow up? You don't want to. You know what I mean? So if you're ever out here, you know, when you jump off cars, and I will tell you that whenever somebody leaves this program, the one thing they know how to do better than anything else is jump off a car. You can jump off a car when you leave here, because you have jumped off 756,214 cars, because most of our vehicles, because of the nature of them, the trainer vehicles, the battery's dead on them a lot of the time when you go out there. How many of you have already had to jump off multiple cars? And you've jumped off cars all the time. However, you're taking your eyes in your hands if you're not wearing safety glasses when you go out there to jump off a car. You really ought to have safety glasses on your face, because if they blow up, it's like, you know, being right next to an IED. Boom! Pieces of plastic coming at your face and all this kind of stuff. You got me? I mean, and it sounds like dynamite going off right in front of you. I've had it happen. Loosened a battery cable bolt. Gosh, this was back in 1978. Put that wrench on that Dodge truck starter. I mean, not starter, battery cable bolt. Took one turn and it went boom! Blew up right in my face. My arm happened to be right here. Stopped all that stuff before it hit me in the face. Happened to be. I made that much of a round when it blew up. And that was pretty hair-raising. Okay, so keep that in mind. Put some safety glasses on when you're jump starting a vehicle, as if you weren't supposed to have them on already.
So we're supposed to ground the battery.
You're supposed to do your last hookup to the engine block on the dead vehicle. Because if you make a spark over a battery that's got some of that explosive gas above it, you can light it off. You got me?
All right.
That's why we're doing that. All right, that's why I was going into that long diatribe. Technician A says the discharged battery, lower than normal battery voltage, can cause solenoid clicking. That's when you try to start it and it go brrrr. All right. Technician B says the discharged battery or dirty corroded battery terminals can cause solenoid clicking. Either one of those is correct. That's C. Slow cranking can be caused by all of these except what? Slow cranking. Lower discharge battery, open neutral safety switch.
I'm gonna go with D.
Huh?
D.
Well, what about, well, dirty or corroded battery terminals are going to make a slow crank. You know, it'll do that because you got voltage drop there. But open neutral safety switch, it ain't going to do nothing at all. It's just going to sit there and try to turn it and it won't make a noise. If the starter turns slowly when engaged, a possible cause is what?
B.
A worn or defective starter. An open ignition switch won't cause it. A defective solenoid won't cause that. Although, I mean, I could probably make a case for the other way. Let me see. This is the boss man. Hello there, Jim. No. Like, do you need an oil change too? Okay, well. Okay, well, I'll get them to bring those wiper blades. I've already ordered the wiper blades, but I told them to wait in case you needed an oil change too. But all right, thanks. He'll be here in 30 minutes. All right, let me see here. And that's not really going to be a big deal, but let's see. let me go back over here.
And the acceptable charging circuit.
If the starter turns slowly, you can have a warned or defective starter. I was going to say if you've got voltage drop inside the starter solenoid, you might have a a slow turning starter, but that is so rare you would almost never see that. An acceptable charging circuit voltage, of course, that would still be a warned or defective starter technically. You know what I'm saying? An acceptable charging circuit voltage on a 12-volt system is what?
C.
12 to 14.
Actually, 13.5 to 15. That's a little wider range than what you were shooting at there. But, all right, technician A says a voltage drop test of the charging circuit should only be performed when current is flowing through the circuit. That's true of any voltage drop test. You should never do a voltage drop test unless current flowing through the circuit, right? Okay, technician B says to connect the leads of a voltmeter to the positive and negative terminals of the battery to measure the voltage drop of the charging system. Do you connect it to the positive and negative terminals? Hello?
Not directly.
What do you mean not directly? You got to do better than that.
No.
Come on. Got your little wire. There's your starter.
I was thinking about amps.
That's amps. All right, this strap right here goes into the starter and feeds the motor. This goes to the positive battery. All right, we're going to do a little thing right here. All right, here's your battery terminal. Right there like that. And this is on your battery. I'm going to hook my meter right here and here. And I'm going to read what I got while I'm spinning it. I'm going from positive to positive. And then on the other side, I'm going to go to the body of the starter and the negative terminal. And I'm going to see how much it is there. You're going to replace the cable or clean the component or whatever. I have seen this one guy, this Mustang Saline came in there. No starter operation. Nearly a brand new car. This guy was one of my helpers. And I said, all right, that's your baby. You see what's wrong with it. It was under warranty. So he goes under there, and what does he do? He gets a test lamp, and he connects it to this little wire, this little S terminal on the starter. And he has somebody turn the starter, and he sees this light up. Okay, that's good, right? We got power coming down here. He checks for power here. He's got power here. All right. So then he says, well, we must have a bad starter. And although it's strange for it to have a bad starter when the car's so new. So he puts a starter on it. And it's an aggravating job, but he fights with it and he finally gets it put on there. When he gets it put on there, hooks his battery cable back up, turns the key just like it was. Hadn't changed a dadgum thing. What did he not check? He checked the bright side, but he didn't check the dark side, which is the ground. And what we had was, on the side of the engine block, there was an anodized bolt going through into a painted boss, and it actually had lost its connection in spite of the fact that it was tight and you couldn't move that cable. So we take it, and how we do this? So we go to the negative side of the battery with our test lamp, we touch the engine block, you try to start it, and the engine block lights up like the whole darn thing's hot. Because the only ground you're getting is through that test light, because there's none going to the engine block, right? Now basically you can have a bad terminal connection at the battery and have that same thing. That's what happened to Johnny Saunders at that 73 Caprice he was driving out here, that old school thing you was talking about, that Impala, you know. Hook up to the negative battery terminal, touch the engine block, and lit the test light when he tried to start it. Tighten that battery cable, he fired up. You know, he's fooling around with a fuse box under there for some reason. All right, so here we go. That's a voltage drop test. Always remember that. I'm always beating on that because too many shops don't ever check voltage drop. They just throw starters and all that kind of stuff.
I was going on that 350. I had blew up all the voltmeters.
Yeah.
Doing the starter.
Did you do it? Did you have a good time?
No.
All right then. All right, let me see here. Where am I at here? Number 8 basically is A. It's only you're only supposed to do. Remember, if you're doing this check, somebody needs to be spinning the starter when you do it. Okay. Testing an electrical system through the ladder plug using a digital meter can test what? In other words, if you use a digital meter and you go through the cigarette lighter plug, what can you test that way? Is there anything you can test that way? Can anybody say charging system voltage? The charging system voltage is going to be constant throughout the whole system. Now you could take a little cigarette lighter plug, you can buy those little things or get one that you get from somewhere and fix it up so that you got a couple of banana plugs to go into your meter, and just plug it into your meter and stab it in there with the hood closed. You can see what the charging system voltage is with the hood closed. Number 10, the maximum acceptable AC ripple voltage. Ooh, that's a tricky question. Is 400 millivolts, which the way you write that is 0.400 V. Technician A says batteries can be tested with an ammeter to determine the state of charge. Technician B says all batteries should be securely attached to the vehicle with hold-down brackets to prevent vibration. How many of you knew that was important? All right, you're not supposed to let that thing bounce around. And I'll tell you something else too. If you're changing a battery out and it's got one of these little blankets around it, the little cover, you need to put that back on there because it's important to you let the battery not get so blistering hot, you know. Yeah, so you got that thing on there. And that's basically an insulator to keep it from getting, engine heat from, being too much for it. We used to put battery boxes on under a recall, and when the Explorers came out, they were boiling acid out of the batteries because it's so hot under there, and they wanted us to put battery covers on them. And so we would basically have to pull the batteries out, clean everything up, brush it, because they were actually boiling a lot of acid out of there and was, making a mess in there. We'd clean all that up, and we'd spray some primer on the battery box, put it all back together, put the battery box on it, and everything like that. So it was supposed to, cover it up and keep it cool and that kind of thing. And see, the engine heat was causing the battery to boil, and it was putting out too much of that acid junk. And so when you put that cover on there, it made it run a lot cooler. That's what that is. And some of them have got like bubble wrap looking things around that slide. It's made to shape of the battery. Put that back on there. Anything that you take and say this is not worth anything anyway and throw it away and not put it back on the car, you're doing a disservice to the people that own the car. Even if you're the person that owns it. But you can't use an ammeter to determine state of charge. How many of you know you're not supposed to take an ammeter and put it from positive to negative on a battery, because then the ammeter becomes the load and you've burned up the ammeter. Think of an ammeter as a jumper wire. Would you take a jumper wire and hook it to the positive and the negative side of the battery? No. What would happen if you did? It would wind up looking like so many of these jumper wires we've got around here would be all blistered and burned and a big mess, because the jumper wire, anything you place between the positive and negative side of the battery, unless it's really high impedance, becomes a load. And a jumper wire or amp meter will come a load, so don't do that. You got it on amps. Even if you got those leads plugged in, to the amp part of the little meters that we use, you'll burn them suckers up. And it happens all the time. Technician A says all battery connections should be tested for corrosion. Technician B says all battery cables should be checked for corrosion and replaced as needed. Which technician is correct about that? Charlie. Okay, technician, actually both of them are right. Technician A says a battery load tests the battery to 1/2 of its cold cranking amp rating. What you do there, if you've got a 600 cold cranking amp battery, you're going to get your battery tester, you're going to hook it up to the battery, take your battery cables off, hook it up to the battery, get that carbon pile knob on the one that we've got. I don't like the one that tests it automatically. All right, but you dial that carbon pile in with your amp clamp is going to be around your battery, your tester cable that's going to the battery. When you dial it up to 300 cold cranking amps, and you're watching, is a 15-second timer that starts blinking when you put that load on it. You keep loading it until that timer quits blinking while you watch that voltage. It should not go below 9.6 volts if it's loaded to 1/2 of its cold cranking amp rating. That's how you do that on this snap-on tester we got out here. Which of these tests is a measure of how well a battery can create current? Resistance test, conductance test, reluctance test, or both A and B? That's actually a conductance test. Technician A says a magnetic field is created in the alternator rotor. Technician B says alternator output's increased if the speed of the generator is decreased. Who's right about that? That's A only. When you make that magnetism in that rotor, the heavier that magnetic field in the rotor is, the stronger it is, but you got to spin it faster if you want it to make it. You can go to the nth degree and say, if I stop the thing, is it going to create anything? No, it's got to be sweeping across those fields. All right, Technician A says a voltage drop test of a charging circuit should be only performed when current is not flowing through the circuit. That's wrong, isn't it? When you say that was wrong? Technician B says to connect the leads of the voltmeter to the positive and negative terminals of the battery to measure the voltage drop of the charging system. Who's right about that? Neither one. Neither one, right? You don't check to positive and negative, do a voltage drop test. Number 17, during the load testing, battery voltage should not drop below how many? Somebody tell me. 9.6. What test is being performed in this illustration? In this illustration, what test is being performed?
D.
Sir?
Ground side voltage drop.
Battery voltage.
What do you think?
I think it's C.
They're actually, you're not, I mean, that's kind of ambiguous, but the correct answer, I mean, there's several tests you could do with it hooked up that way. Starter amperage draw test. Remember the arrow on the amp clamp goes away from the battery on the negative side or toward the battery on the positive side, or if you're hooking it to the alternator lead, it's going to go toward the battery with the alternator, you know, pointing away from the alternator.
What was
All right.
13?